Hello, I'm Dynast Amir.
So I reached out to another friend of mine. I said, look, I need to go on vacation somewhere. Where should I go? He said, go to Africa. And not only am I going to go, I'm going to explore a new country. So I went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Mali, Senegal, Morocco, Liberia, Namibia, Kenya, the Voodoo Festival in Ouida, Gambia, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire. Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria. It's been a beautiful experience, just learning more about our culture, our indigenous culture. So Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. I'm in search of my roots. In finding that, I would experience my Uhuru, which is freedom.
Till next time, Dynast Amir, I'm out.
Peace, family. I hope all is well. I hope your Friday. Today is Friday, y'all. I hope your Friday is going well. Give me a second. Make sure we get this focus right. There we go. I hope all is well. I hope your Friday is going well. Guys, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Again, when you come into the chat room, family, you should already know to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Again, you should already know to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Let me scoot up a little bit closer. Here we go. And real quick, before we get into the announcements, well, actually, this is actually an announcement. Sipping Africa, I will in about 30 minutes. Give me about 30 minutes, and I'll put the link in the chat room. Guys, make sure you go subscribe also to links in the chat room. Brandon's backup channel. Brandon's backup channel. Pan-Africanism Strikes Back Shorts. Okay, and you can see it in the ticker on the bottom of the screen. Make sure you go subscribe to Brandon's backup channel. He I think his other page got flagged. So again, please go and subscribe to his backup channel, family. Go support our brother Brandon at Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. Link is in the chat room, and link is in the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Also, listen, if you have not bought the documentary, In Search of Uhuru, please go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary. I will greatly appreciate it. Again, please go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary if you have not bought the documentary yet, guys. I want everybody who is watching this, everyone who is looking at this, make sure you go and buy the documentary. A lot of y'all, and listen, I gotta call you out. A lot of y'all been giving me, hey, yo, Dynast, bro, I'm gonna get the documentary this weekend. You've been telling me that for the past 6 weekends. You've been giving me, I'm gonna get the documentary this weekend, and you've been telling me that for the past 6 weekends. So please do me a favor. Go to searchforuhuru.com. Again, go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary. You said a link isn't taking you back to his backup channel? Delina, shout out to Delina, everybody. Listen, we haven't had to pray for Delina in a minute because Delina's been on her best behavior. She's been on her best behavior, so we haven't had to pray for her recently. The link isn't taking me to his backup channel. That's the link that brother. Hold on, maybe if we do this, hold on 1 second. Try this, guys. Let me put this in the chat room. Okay, guys, try it now. Try it now. Try this, guys. Try this and see if it works. Maybe if we remove the two dashes at the back. Link's not available. Okay, guys, try it. Try it again. Try the link now and see if it works. That worked. Okay, yeah, I have to remove the dashes at the back. Okay, off the back of the URL. So I'm sorry about that. So guys, make sure you go support Brandon, and then make sure you go to searchforuhuru.com. Go to searchforuhuru.com and buy the documentary, family. Listen, everybody, if you're watching this, you got to have the documentary. All right. Again, please go and buy the documentary. Also, tours. We are rolling. You know, I've already announced the tour schedule for next year. Again, I've already announced the tour schedule for next year. So please go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. It's all updated. Again, please go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. And listen, we're gonna run a early bird special. Again, we're gonna run an early bird special. So Senegal, early bird special. Instead of deposit being $500, $250. Okay. Instead of the deposit being $500, the deposit is $250 for Senegal for next year. Okay, for the Jazz Festival, early bird special. So again, if you want to roll with us to Senegal next year, also we're doing Sierra Leone in April, Senegal in May, Nigeria in August, Zanzibar in November, and then if they have a citizenship ceremony in Sierra Leone in next November, I'm gonna do that as well. So again, early bird special. Deposit instead of 500 is 250, but you'll have to pay the deposit via Zelle or crypto or Cash App, because I'm through the site. The minimum deposit is 500. So if you want to pay the 500 deposit, you're more than welcome to. But if you want to go ahead and lock it in, you can do 250. Just hit me up offline. Go to danfo.africa. I'll put the link. Links in the chat room. The link will be on the screen. Go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. Go to Danfo, DANFO.Africa. I'm not sure why Brandon's page got flagged, but it did. So let's go subscribe to Brandon's backup page. Well, listen, we're only rolling this out for Senegal in May. Again, no, that's Sheikh Amadou Bamba. We're only rolling this out for Senegal. Senegal in May. Okay. So early bird special, deposit 250 instead of 500, and that's good for a month. So we'll run that. In fact, we'll do it from now to Thanksgiving. Again, we'll do it from now to Thanksgiving, the early bird special for Senegal, just for Senegal. I don't want it. I just want a red custom outfit. Okay, cool. I got you. I got you a red custom outfit. No problem. All right, guys. So do me a favor, hit the like button. Again, please hit the like button. And we're gonna jump into today's topic. Today's topic, I saw this interview with Jordan Peterson and a young lady, and they were speaking on colonialism in Africa, and is it a cause is it a reason why Africa is poor? And so Jordan Peterson, young lady, it's a shame that, hold on, let me pull up her name. I apologize. You know, I apologize. Let me pull up her name real quick. And they were having a debate in regards to colonialism in Africa, and is it the reason why Africa is poor? And Magat Wade, I'm sorry, Magat Wade, Magattewade, and it might be Wade, Magat Wade. I think she's from a French-speaking country. I'm not sure, but you know, we're gonna take a look at this, and you know, I'll give my my response.
Well, you list
as we look at this, and then after that, we'll take some callers. But me personally, just off top, I don't. Leadership is the reason why. Poor leadership is the reason why Africa's facing the issues that it's experiencing, the issues that it's experiencing today. Leadership. I don't think it's. Oh, Alan, I'm reading your comment. Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, you could say colonialism plays a part, but I think a lot of it has to be, a lot of Africa's problems are self-inflicted. That's my honest issue. That's my honest opinion. You know, a lot of people say the IMF and, you know, the economic hitmen and all this other stuff. But honestly, I would say a lot of it is self-inflicted. So let's go ahead and jump into this video.
Well, you list here in one of your articles where you make reference to these rating systems, the bottom 10 countries for doing business in the world: Chad, Haiti, Central African Republic, Congo Democratic Republic, South Sudan, Libya, Yemen, Venezuela. There's a lovely example: Eritrea and Somalia. And so there are three exceptions in the African ecosystem. Mauritius, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia. You pointed out in your prospectus, is it prospectus article?
Prospectus article of Artbridge Institute.
Right, that Mauritius is a rising star, and Rwanda is in some ways comparable to Georgia. So some of these countries have started to get this right.
Yes.
And so what's the consequence of that? And what does right mean?
What they have understood, what these countries have understood, is that economic freedom is at the center for prosperity building. Rwanda, for example, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, is explicit about it. He said he wants to be the Lee Kuan Yew he wants to be the Singapore of Africa.
I know when we mention Kagame, a lot of people get triggered, especially my Congolese family. Y'all get triggered off of Kagame. All right, but we still have to recognize and applaud what Kagame has been able to do in Rwanda, fresh off of a genocide. So not only colonialism, but also coming out of a genocide. We have to. But guys, listen. Let me. When it comes to Kagame and the DRC, I'm like this, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset. A lot of my Congolese family, you guys are going to be upset in regards to what I'm going to say about the Congo. Protect your borders. Protect your borders. I mean, is Kagame the problem, or is Congolese corruption the problem? That's the question. Is Kagame the issue? Again, is Kagame the issue, or is it Congolese corruption? Because I keep hearing it's Kagame. He's in the DRC, you know, carrying out acts of genocide and taking our minerals. Okay. All right, I get it if that's true. So protect your borders. Where's Congolese leadership at? That's what I'm saying. Okay, you say Kagame is complicit. Okay, what's Congolese leadership doing? What you mean that American black and white logic? No, it's really black and white. What is Congolese leadership doing? The DRC doesn't have any control of Eastern DRC. Well, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Yeah, let Kagame take over the Congo. All right, let's go.
And Lee Kuan Yew is his model. Now, the dirty mouths are going to start shouting, oh, yeah, see, authoritarian, blah, 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 whatever. Me, I want to talk only about the on the economic side. If you take Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore as your example, then it means that, like him, you're going to have to be serious about economic freedom. And that's exactly what he did. That's what Singapore did. When Singapore figured that out, they went on to put in the right reforms to make their environment some of the most business-friendly environments in the world, one of the most free markets environment in the world. And you saw the magic of Singapore. Today, Singapore is richer than its ex-colonizer, Great Britain. So when I hear people telling me today, oh, Africa is poor because of colonization, I'm like, please, let's move on from that. Does it have maybe a tiny percentage in where we?
I agree. Let's move on from it. Listen, I agree. It's 2022. It's like when here in America, when black people say, when they make excuses for black men killing other black men, and they say it's white supremacy's fault. Or they say, they took all the factories and manufacturing out of the community and sent it to China. That's why, black men can't stop shooting or killing black men, is because the white man took out the manufacturing out of the communities. It's 2022 now. All right, are black men killing other black men here in America has its roots in slavery? Stuff like that. So I agree with her.
We are today? Maybe.
There should be no reason why there should be no excuse why Nigeria doesn't have 24-hour electricity. No excuse. There should be no excuse. Same thing with a lot of these other countries in Africa. So yeah, so we gotta leave colonialism out of it. There's no excuse. There should be no excuse why everyone doesn't have access to running water throughout Africa. Everyone should have access to running water and electricity, 24-hour electricity throughout Africa, period. No excuse. We're talking basic infrastructure in 2022. Everyone should have access to it in Africa. Basic development, basic infrastructure, running water, electricity. Everyone should have access to it in Africa. I don't care where you're at. Again, I don't care where you're at.
Maybe, and I don't know. But I know it's not the cause. Because if it were, countless countries have been colonized before. And by the way, colonizing one another is humanity's history. It just happened that maybe Africa has been one of the last, colonized region in the world. So in our psyche, it is there, and it acts like nothing happened before to others. But flash news, it's the history of the world. We've been capturing each other back and forth, all of that. So anyway, but the truth is, Singapore, richer than Great Britain today. And then Hong Kong happened. And then because Hong Kong happened, China even today happened. Because China's like, wait a minute, what went on over there? And then China went on to do the exact same thing with its SEZs, the special economic zones, some of the most free market zones in the world. And then look at it happen in communist China, who, when it comes to economics, decided that we're going to do the free market, we're going to be capitalist, because that's the only way. We tried everything else. We killed hundreds of millions of people, and we have nothing to show for it. But now that we're tired of being disrespected members of society, because guess what? That's the other thing too. You want to be respected in this world? You're going to have to be among the prosperous ones for other reasons. Would it be nice, G, that we respect people just because? Absolutely. But that's really not the world we live in. So when China got tired of being disrespected, they're like, maybe we got to build also some prosperity here, because then they're going to hear us. And today, China, being one of the, being where it is.
Listen, let's see here. Katie, at least Europe is falling. Listen, there was an article that came out today, or it was yesterday, saying that the UK is regressing or devolving into a developing country. I got to find that article. You're right. Again, there's an article that came out. I think it was today, or it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Pretty much saying how let's put it this way. Pretty much saying how the UK is devolving into a developing country. I got to find that article. Hey, DZon, thank you for the super chat.
Even Hollywood, who tries to tell the world how to think, is being told by China what movies to make and how to tweak stories and history in order to be palatable for them. You see the power that comes with being prosperous.
The Consumer Price Index has reached yet another 40-year high, and the latest GDP numbers confirm that the United States is in a recession. Now is not the time
to countries like Senegal to get the hell out of the way, let's say, of the people who would, like you, would do everything they could to try to make it better. I mean, one of the things that happened with India is India established the Indian Institute of Technology, which is a deadly engineering school. And a huge number of its graduates went to Silicon Valley, as you well know. And many of the successful Indian graduates of IIT started to dump money back into India and build a capitalist infrastructure there, or help build a capitalist infrastructure there. So this sort of thing can really take hold. If you were making recommendations to governments who wanted to get on board and stop being like Chad, Haiti, Central African Republic, Congo, South Sudan, Libya, Yemen, and Venezuela, etc., what concrete steps should they take from the bottom up to get the hell out of the way?
Exactly. So two things we've been doing, because I'm a practitioner, that's my entrepreneurial journey. I'm an entrepreneur, so I practice what I preach, but I also preach. I preach for free markets. And so when it comes to that, I'm one of the hats that I wear is as the director for the African.
I preach free markets as well.
Center for Prosperity of the Atlas Network, the largest organization in the world of free market think tanks around the world. And so what we do there is we work on reforms around the world to take down barriers of entry for local entrepreneurs. So that's one thing. But as we all know, that's a great initiative to take, and we've been making some really good advances in many countries, especially in Ghana. We've been making a lot of progress with our partners there, Imani. But that is piecemeal legislation. It takes forever. It is hard as heck. And by the time you made a gain here, you made 20 losses over there, and it's an continuous problem, but until we get better, we got to continue at it. So that's one thing we've been doing. And so that's a hat I wear, working with free market think tanks to try to make it easier for local entrepreneurs to join in the party. Additionally, I'm going bold, I'm going radical. For the past few years, we've been advocating an idea for Africa that found some of its roots in Latin America. And again, I'm related to the people who are involved in this. My husband being one of the key figures in this movement, a movement called the Charter Cities. Paul Romer calls it like that. He's a Nobel laureate in economics. Others call it the free cities. I like to call it the startup cities. So the best way to think about it, Jordan, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier when you use the word operating software, most of the poor, developing, most of the low-income nations, so meaning back in the days, the way we used to call it is poor nations, they have regulations for poverty. They're basically regulated for poverty, meaning the laws, the set of law, poverty. It only calls poverty. And so what some of these folks have thought about, looking at the Dubai example, Dubai just recently entered the top 10 of international financial centers of the world. And what Dubai did at some point is think about it and be like, on this bare, plot of sand that's technically worth nothing right now as is, this 110 acres of land, sand everywhere. They're like, well, maybe Sharia law is not the best for business. We got to think about better set of laws for business. We're talking only about business, not family law, not anything else but business. And they decided there's got to be something better. And so they looked around, and that's actually when, to take one of the terms you used earlier, they're starting to realize, common law is actually a better way for business, specifically British common law. So at that point, and I'm oversimplifying here because otherwise we can totally geek out on it. Remember, this is like one of my latest things that I've been involved in, but latest, it's been the past 10 years, and I'm going to share with you a win. So Dubai is like, we have to adopt British, common law, primarily British common law. We're going to hire retired British common law judges to come and educate the law here, train our own people. And that, along with many other reforms, to also become a top center when it comes to the, and in the free market when it comes to the finances. Dubai.
That British common law system. So it's very, very interesting theologically and metaphysically. So it's predicated on the idea that every individual has all the rights that there are, except for those that are specifically regulated and limited by legal necessity. And then generally that realm of necessity has emerged only as a consequence of disputes between people. So you're free to do whatever you want unless you have a dispute with someone else. Then the dispute is adjudicated according essentially to constitutional and theological principles, and then a precedent is established. Then the whole body of law built up that body of precedents.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's bottom up, not top down.
It's totally
and
that.
English common law is a gift from God, man.
No,
it's something else.
Absolutely. And that's the key word there when you said bottom up. So common law is so much better for bottom up approaches. And we all know that markets work better in a bottom up approach. And also, when they have to educate the law and resolve a dispute, they're going to be much more respectful to the contract that was passed between the two parties than, say, civil law would be, right? And so anyway, so from this standpoint here, you have Dubai who's now trying to put all of this together, and eventually they put a set of laws together that would now be conducive to being a top international financial center in the world. And voila, in less than a generation, in less than 25 years, Dubai, completely unrecognizable.
Larry, you make a great point, Larry. I'm gonna put the link in the chat room here shortly, Larry. You make a great point. A lot of these, I would say, Africa, TED Talk, these speakers who know everything about Africa, the economy, governments, how systems work. Like I don't know what kind of business they run or operate. Guys, give me a second. I gotta sneeze. Give me a second. I couldn't sneeze for some reason. But like for example, me, I have a tour company. I have a travel company. I could discuss my travel company, what I do. This is what I do. Pretty much I bring people over who want to experience Africa. I facilitate that. But a lot of, like I said, these talking heads who show up to, these seminars and they give these speeches and TED Talks, like you don't know what they do. And it's always very, 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 very vague. So I understand what you're saying, Larry. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of Mufasa, like you said, it's a lot of just general conversations about Africa. But you never know what they do. But they're always, they're always at a TED Talk or some conference on Africa and the best ideas, but you never really find out, like, what do you do? Like, they never really articulate what they do. But listen, they're at every TED Talk, every conference on Africa, every think tank when it comes to Africa. They are there. But guys, listen, I'm going to put the link in the chat room. I'm going to put the link in the chat room. Because you're right, Larry. I would rather her talk. In fact, I'll look online because this is the only video I've seen of her. So I don't want to judge. But I'll look online and see if she like talks about her business. Links in the chat room. Click on the link. Again, links in the chat room. Click on the link if you want to call in and add to the conversation. You're more than welcome to call in and add to the conversation. And guys, do me a favor. Hit the like button. If you're in the chat room, okay? If you're in the chat, if you're watching this right now, do me a favor. Please hit the like button again. Please hit the like button, guys. Go ahead, OB.
Hey, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to speak on the subject. So,
one second. Somebody, Phil said it wasn't technical enough. Well, in all respect, I mean, it was only she only had 11 minutes. Hold on, guys, give me a second. Mansa.
Sorry, you talking about me?
Huh? I can't. Okay. OB, go ahead and unmute yourself, OB.
All right. That was kind of weird.
Sorry, you talking about me?
Yeah, go ahead, OB. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So, this is a really important discussion. Talking about the economy. I generally agree. We definitely need to be talking more about capitalism and about free markets. But so my main issue with this thing is this woman, we got the question, why is she talking to white people and not to black people or black governments about this? And the reason is,
are you claiming that is she not talking to black people? Is that what you're saying?
I've been seeing her making the rounds on social media, and she's just mainly talking to white folks. So what we need to be careful about is this. A lot of people give us solutions or say things that are factual, but their intention is to absolve another side. So she's saying something that has a of truth, but she's talking to white folks because she wants white folks to know you didn't do anything wrong to black people, and don't feel bad about anything you've done wrong to black people. That's the purpose of why she's saying what she's saying. But on the flip side, we do need free markets, but we also have to understand, in my opinion, what Africa needs to do is something that hasn't been done, because a lot of people don't study the economic history of the non-white countries. There is no non-white country that is successful that did not have white investment. China is not successful on its own. It had investment from America. Japan is not successful on its own. It had investment from America. Korea is not successful on its own. It got investment from America. So we have to ask ourselves, did we have the relationship, or did these other countries have the same relationship that we have with the West, with America, with Europe? So it's not that we shouldn't have free markets, that we should have excuses for African governments, that we shouldn't have private business, very friendly business laws and practices in Africa. The question is, can we compare the situation with a Singapore, a Korea, a China, a Japan to Africa? The West has a geopolitical reason for not investing in our countries. All African leadership over the past 200-300 years has always been partial to the West. So it could have been easy for the West to invest and build great business with African partners, even easier than other countries. Look at their relationship with China right now. They don't even want China to be as successful as it is now. It's just that China took advantage of arbitrage. They took advantage of the fact that the West wanted to be greedy and use cheap labor, but they never wanted to have that same situation with Africa. So my point in saying all of this is that, yes, we need free markets, but we're not going to get the same situation of getting investment from the West. All these other countries got investment from the West. And the bigger thing looking into the future is this. China, India, and Western countries, when it comes to manufacturing, everybody's pulling their manufacturing back into their own house. So the idea that Africa is going to be able to use manufacturing by manufacturing goods for American companies or Chinese companies in the future, that's going out of the way. Everybody's turning to robotics, and they're also going to turn back to doing manufacturing in-house. There are some statistics and different pundits around the internet talking about how the wage cost in China has gone dramatically up. So it's actually more advantageous for American companies to bring manufacturing back to America. So what we're going to have to do as Africans is we're going to have to find a way to pool investment amongst ourselves. Yeah, there might be companies and countries here and there that might invest in us, but the idea that we're going to have the same deal that Singapore, Korea, China, India got, it's not going to happen. And it didn't happen for a geopolitical reason. And these people, like this woman, they never say that. And they don't say that because they're not being honest. Their intention is the West is not wrong for their relationship with Africa. The whites didn't do something wrong to you. And that's bullshit.
All right, go ahead, Sipping Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Dynast. Hello, everyone. I was actually on your live stream at one point a few months ago. It's funny because I actually talked about the same DRC and Rwanda thing that you mentioned earlier at the beginning. So that's funny. But anyways, on the person Jordan interviewed, I did 3 videos on this. And it's interesting because she isn't inherently wrong in a sense.
Right.
Because she's a businesswoman, first and foremost. She said herself, she's an entrepreneur. And the thing about entrepreneurs and businesswomen, they only look at facts and figures. Only. And because of that, they don't look at the geopolitical aspects behind what they say, or the social aspects behind what they say, or even the history. So to her, she just looked at Rwanda statistics, Namibia statistics, Central African Republic statistics. Okay, then compare them to this and that. Okay, this is how they can get better. But it's more complex. For example, she was like, Botswana. That's one of the examples she made. Botswana got so good. It's getting better, and it's gone really good, and they're getting it right. Yeah, but she didn't mention the sacrifice that the Tswana people had to do to get to that point. Not a sacrifice they even wanted to do. She also mentioned countries like Rwanda, South Korea, Singapore, and all these 3 countries actually have one thing in common. Every single one of them. When they became free from colonization, or when they entered the free market, every single one of them was resource poor. South Korea had like steel, technically, that's true, but they were resource poor, basically. And because of that, when they entered the free market, most Western companies were like, we can't really take anything from these nations. Let them be. Let them have fun in the free market. So there's actually a real correlation between countries which are resource poor and aren't in the Western world and how well they do economically. If you're resource rich and you want to enter the free market, it's a different story. Now these Western companies want to send stuff to you. They want to send their companies to you. They want to start doing business in different ways. They want to start getting involved in your politics much more. With Rwanda, they didn't care because Rwanda has nothing. With Korea, they didn't care because Korea has nothing. With Singapore, they didn't care because Singapore has nothing. It had nothing. So they were able to really go into the free market and build something of themselves. But someone like Nigeria, DRC, any other country, South Africa, Egypt, etc., which have a lot, and they entered the free market, they basically got sodomized. They got economically sodomized, if I'm being honest.
Hey,
Because a lot of
Donis.
these countries would, a lot of the Western companies would be like, okay, we want resources from there, but they want to build themselves, but we can't have that because that's not going to give us a lot of money. So what can we do? Well, they get involved in the politics of the nation. They get involved in corruption, etc. Then they build the corruption of the nation, and now it gets messy. And the only exception to the countries of Africa, which wasn't resource poor but became successful, was Botswana. The only one, resource rich but became successful. What did they have to do? It wasn't all happy. Seretse Khama, the independence hero of Botswana, he had to bend over backwards for the British. He had to let them pretend that the genocide of Botswana didn't happen. He just had to let that go, or force himself to let it go. He had to let them berate him over 2 decades in his family life, in his social life, in the whole nation, basically embarrassing him in front of all the other leaders. They made Botswana at the time when transnational corporations came into the country. They literally, how should I say this? They only gave the government, I think it started off as 5% of all the diamond revenue. In over 20 years, from 5%, it grew to 30. And now after 60 years, it's 70. Imagine having to go through 60 years of humiliation and indignity and denying a lot of stuff that happened to you just to make these people happy. And all you get in return after 60 years is 70% of your own resources you finally own after 60 years. That's what they get. And they bent over backwards trying to please.
You're muted, Donis.
Sorry, Dennis, can't hear you.
Yeah, my bad. Ob, let's pass. Ob, you wanted to say something? You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of just give the people a little bit of history because as Africans, a lot of us, the general population amongst us, we're not looking at the history of some of these places that we compare to us, like Japan and China, right? And so the thing is, the Japanese did something special amongst the non-European nations, which is in the late 1800s. They decided, after dealing with the West and the West cracking their political system open, they decided to send people to Britain. They developed technology, brought that back to Japan, and started to grow that. And then they went on a militaristic campaign. They started projecting power, trying to take over Asia. And then when they lost in World War II, what the United States did to do was, you know what, we're going to bring them into the fold as like a junior partner. And then in the Marshall Plan, they actually invested in their economy in the 50s and the 60s, and then they started to build up. So people talk about Japan like 5-6 trillion GDP, great economy, but they were invested in by the West, in that sense. On the same thing with China. What with China was in the late 60s, 70s, where they were dealing and having an association with the Soviet Union, but the United States politically wanted to break up that union, didn't want them to be a bloc against the West. So they decided to politically join with China. And then after they decided to do an investment with China, at the same time, the Chinese leadership said, let's stop doing communism and do some type of light capitalism. But what we have to understand is this: with all of these countries, what they're doing is that you have different companies in these countries partnering with American companies or British companies or German companies. So Apple, and you know, any one of these different companies they have, they're coming to these countries saying, you know, do you have a factory? Do you have labor that we can use? And they're also looking at the labor statistics and everything like that. So we have to understand, you know, because a lot of us don't understand business, we think that an African country can, somebody from Africa can come to America, decide to take over like a large portion of a market that already exists here. It doesn't work like that. It was that the Western companies had market share here, and then they decided to make their products cheaper by going to Asian countries and getting Asian labor. We don't have that same situation. All of these countries have built their wealth based off of using that income they got from. So Apple sells phones here and they pay for the phone to be made in China. And the person who actually makes it in China obviously gets like 10%, 5% of the actual full profit or revenue from that. And they decided to take that 5-10% and invest it into their economy. We did not have that same situation. So people don't bring that important point to the fold. So the free market is good, and I support that. We need that. But we're in a totally different situation investing in ourselves than having Europeans invest in us.
Let's pass it to Tindad. Go ahead, Tindaji.
All right. Let me see. Peace, family. First, Dynast, I wanted to say, look, I'm gonna be home. I'm gonna be home next week. Me and my wife plan on watching a documentary. You heard me? So I'm gonna
All right,
let you know how it goes. But
Appreciate
I'm gonna
it,
say
brother.
this as far as the last point the brother made. As far as the last point the brother made, we gotta make our countries ripe for investment. You know what I'm saying? So the point you said is well taken, but we gotta make our countries on the continent the right place for investment. Now I jotted down a few notes on things I want to speak about throughout the video. Give me like 2 minutes. You hear me? I'm gonna say this first of all, as far as what you brought up, Dynast, as far as every time you bring up Rwanda, you got a whole bunch of ooh and ah, and everybody, got something to say. And what I view it, we gotta be able to be multifaceted in the way we think. We can't just think one way, and you know, it's like excuse making to me. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the same shit Black Americans do here. It's like as soon as you try to say, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" It's like they're gonna find another excuse or reason as to why this particular place ain't doing what it need to do. And like you said, it's the leadership. You know what I'm saying? And I would rather, and I don't know all the details, so somebody could come tell me I'm wrong. I would rather an African country be benefiting from those minerals as opposed to them just all being sold for cheap or taken by the UN or whoever else. So that was the first point. Number two, I'm gonna say I agree. I agree with the sister. I forgot her name on the video, but I agree 100%. Like we need to get past the excuse making, and she said Africa in the position is in because of XYZ. Now the point I do want to say is, it is a line. It is a fine line between not trying to hold people accountable, because I see what Sip in Africa was saying. It's a fine line between that and also being about the business. And that goes to one of the points Sip in Africa said that, well, she not considering the geopolitics. And I think we need more people like that. You know what I'm saying? I think we need, like, everybody in a war, different people have different positions. Everybody not a rifleman, or everybody not infantry, everybody not a sniper. You got, you know what I'm saying, scouts. People have different positions, and I actually think that more people need to be not consider the history. History is it should be a specialized group within your country. Everybody shouldn't have to consider history when it comes to starting a business or looking for solutions all the time. I do understand the importance of it, but I think we need to have more people who, because I think when you start to go too much into history, you're gonna start making too many excuses as to why you can't do. So I don't mind the fact that the sister and others like her strictly focus on business and don't consider all of the geo politics. And she mentioned something about what she's doing in Ghana as far as supporting barriers to entry for small business owners and things like that. And she said it was like It was piecemeal. And what we got to understand is a lot of the progress we're going to need to be made is going to have to be piecemeal. We don't like to hear that. We want to hear that the leaders just going to come in and change everything, which we know that plays a big part, and we hope it happens. But a lot of the steps going to come from the bottom up, like they was talking about in the video. Last couple of points I'm going to say. The African diaspora, as far as continental Africans who outside of Africa, one of the things that I think, one of the ideas I would suggest is those people unite. To negotiate with those particular countries, because that remission, what they call it, remission or remittance or something like that, that plays a huge role in these economies. And if you can, I don't know how it could be done. I ain't got the answers, but you're gonna have to. You can get some power back by Africans who doing all this remitting, organizing as some kind of group, and saying, look, we need, and I know that money is going to families and things like that. I don't know. That was just an idea I thought of, and you know, the Dubai example they gave, I love that example they gave about them implementing the common law, because I feel like if you take a little bit of what the British or whoever done right, and then you intermingle that with your culture and traditions, then becomes a solution that's unique for you. You know what I'm saying? So in your country and your people. So I think African people need to, do things similar, which is just implement what works in your country under, with your values, because we do need African solutions for African problems. And I'm gonna leave it there for now.
All right, let's pass it. Go ahead, Mono.
Yeah, I wanted to say a number of things. I think Tendaji kind of took away with most of what I wanted to say, but let me just touch on a couple of things. I think some of the problems that we're having is processes and procedures sometimes, because we might sit and talk about the history, we might explain how Europe helped China, helped Japan, and there might be reasons for that. And of course, that is part of the reason why they succeeded, but it's not all of it. And all the theories about Singapore and different countries having really made strides and African countries having not done that. We could do the TED Talks and make prescriptions, but again, we need the implementation. And for every country with changing times, you expect different strategies. But again, Africa is a continent of almost 12 million square miles, 54 countries, 1.4 billion as we speak and counting, and it's going to be responsible for more than 1/3 of the population growth in the next 50 years, which means if you have better strategy, you have younger population, you have the resources, you have every weather condition that is good for growth. You have the sun if you want to do solar. You have the equatorial rainforest in Congo, parts of Cameroon, all the way southern part of West African countries. You have the green forest. So you could do everything that you want to do. Sometime in the past, I made some contribution. I said, well, if India had the technological university and we have an African Union every year, instead of having just Israel coming to supervise you, why don't you at least emulate some of the things that India has done? Why can't we, based on the regional blocks in Africa, have 5 regional technological universities where you could have the brightest minds in Africa, the students from Sierra Leone, from Liberia, Congo, Ghana, Botswana, Malawi. You do competitive examinations, and even the African diaspora worldwide, get them into these universities, fully fund them. Africa has the money and the resources, build those universities for technology, for medicine, medical research. Get your own medical doctors, get your own engineers, because you can't build when you buying machines from China. If you want to buy from China, you need the dollar. And if you get in the way of Western countries, they put a ban, a finance sanction, you can use the dollar or the euro. So what you have to do is, if you're making those stuff and you're able to sell them, even if you're not able to sell them, you have 54 countries, use it for yourself. You have a lot of development to do. The compressors, the bulldozers, you need those because you can print any amount of money you want to do in Naira, in CDs. But if you have to buy something, equipment from China, you need a dollar. So you need to have yours. So that's why you need those technological universities for engineering and manufacturing. You can't have a big agricultural base when you're just doing peasant farming. It doesn't work that way. Look at cocoa. It is a $160 billion dollar industry. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire contribute 70% of the production of cocoa, but Ghana makes less than $5 billion. Switzerland, that buys about 20% of Ghana's cocoa, makes 40 billion a year. So think about it. What is the problem? Is the processing. Ghana doesn't have the machines. Now, Ghana did a very good thing. The president, Ado, year of return, that was good. But when the diaspora started going to Ghana, a very simple process that the Ghanaian government would have put in place just to have an office for the diaspora that can be responsible for lands and surveys. So that when you come in with your dollar from America, from UK, from wherever, you go in there, if you want to buy land, it goes through that process. The government supervises it and you make sure the person doesn't lose money. But you're having a lot of diasporans going to Ghana and having to leave because there's no real process in place. So I keep talking about the processes and procedures. Going to the medical regional universities, just like the technological universities, is the same thing. America has a National Institute of Health. Africa might have all of this development, but think about if you have a virus that is as deadly as, I've forgotten the name, is it the bubonic virus? It can wipe out half of the population of Africa. Why? Because we don't have processes and procedures. Build your manufacturing base, build your own universities, and then in terms of power, grab. Because if you think of a country like Nigeria, even in this day and age, having a president like Buhari, it is not just shameful, it is vicariously embarrassing, given the talent pool in Nigeria, to have Buhari, who was a military dictator, who was ousted because he was so weak, so feeble, had no ideas. And Nigeria still had to elect him on the guise of him being able to fight Boko Haram. It's nonsense, but many Nigerians should be able to do something that can change Nigeria. Think about it. If Nigeria had to be at war with Russia, Nigeria is a country 4 times the population of Ukraine. But Ukraine, even though they had support from the West, but they've been able to stand their ground and fight because they've been able to produce something. But this is a country with 4 times the population of Ukraine, doesn't really produce as much as it should, but has a talent pool to really make that happen. But what is the problem is processes and procedures. We keep putting people in the wrong places. Think about a country like Cameroon. November this year will make their president 40 years in power. Probably is the most ineffective president ever on the continent. So you might blame France, but again, it goes back to the man who wants to be there and who's not really been elected by his people. You might go to Uganda, look at Museveni. He says some nice things, but again, the fact that he cannot get out of the way after about 30 years to get some other person with fresh ideas, it impedes the development of the country. Equatorial Guinea, the president is there, he's been there since 1979, I guess, but he's appointed his son to be the vice president. So we have presidential royalties in place. You don't make ideas when you rule by edicts. It doesn't happen. So if those prescriptions are put in place from because look at the agricultural revolution gave way to the industrial revolution. You must start there, but you must build your own. If you keep waiting on the Western world, they don't have the space. They don't have any place to go. Congo is 80% of the size of Western Europe. With the pushback from Russia and China, Western Europe is eclipsed. So they can only look to Africa. If you think they're going to allow Africa just to change on their watch without you having your own strategy and means of doing it, then think again.
All right, let's pass it down. Guys, do me a favor, hit the like button again. Please hit that like button as you come to the chat room again. Do me a favor, hit the like button as you come to the chat room. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, basically, looking at the video, I saw that. Thanks for doing this show because I saw that video and I didn't want to watch it because.
Hey, Alan, you're going in and out. You're not clear.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Is this better?
That's better. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the video. I didn't want to watch it at first because it was Jordan Peterson, and I just felt like he was going to make excuses, and there were excuses being made. and he used the African woman to make the excuses. However, I've never watched something that was actually I agreed with and disagreed with at the same time. And here's what I'm saying. You have, yes, they got to stop making excuses. I was making a lot of those excuses before I saw that woman, Dembasi Moyo, who wrote that book about African aid, and Paul Kagame. Quite frankly, he kind of showed that this stuff is actually possible, and maybe we are making too many excuses. However, we cannot forget the history. Everyone wants to go past the history, but African leaders have been selected by the West for a very long time, going all the way back to Patrice Lumumba and all those other people. That they were taken out. People who would have been good for African countries were taken out, and then we end up with Mobutu Sese Seko and all these other people who are doing all kinds of wild foolishness. So we cannot forget that. However, we cannot also expect for the West to support any kind of growth going on with Africans. They're not going to. They stole it, but we must return it. We got it. We got to get it together, and we got to figure out a way to do it. But at the same time, I felt the spirit in which the lady was speaking with Jordan Peterson was to excuse any culpability of white Europeans for how they treated us, and that's not necessarily acceptable. But the gist of what she was saying was correct.
Yeah, I think that was irrelevant.
One second, there, Alan. So you mentioned the lady that wrote the book. What's her name?
Moya Dambasi. I forget how to say her name, but she's the one who wrote that that aid was one of the biggest problems with Africa.
Alan, I'm starting to notice like a lot of these African women who are the thought leaders, they all got European husbands because she married a European too.
Yes.
Her name is Dambisa.
That's not a coincidence.
Yeah, she was making a good point though.
Yeah, let me say. I think that was irrelevant as far as her spirit. Unless we could talk about the facts and where she lied at or something like that. But as far as the history goes, and tell me if you agree with me, Alan. I think we've seen a case study here in America where the history has been used, and now that's people's entire livelihood. You can manipulate this, not manipulate it as in change the facts, but you can point out any section of history without the context and make an excuse as to why we can't do this, we can't do that. I think we have to kind of,
Alan,
we got to make a line between that.
Alan, he has a point now. He has a great point.
Man, let me bring a greater point than his point though. Let me bring a greater point.
No. He has a point because you still got folks saying, man, we can't build nothing because of Black Wall Street. All they gonna do is burn it down.
That's true.
So Ted Dodge, he got a point.
That's true.
I get tired of that
he's
shit,
talking
bro.
about.
But hold on, but Ted Dodge, hold on, Ted Dodge, are you finished?
Well, I'm gonna just add that.
Go ahead.
Just for a few seconds, if we look at even with some, because of the over historization, that's not even a word, but you get things that happen. Like if you look at some of these scholars from the past, let's just say 30 years, you talk about the Claude Andersons and the Runoko Rashidis and these guys, some of the stuff that they were saying to promote African liberation, progressiveness, do for self-reliance, has been twisted even to now promote they've been taken to be like, oh, we here in America, and they cite Runoko Rashidi and Dr. Claude Anderson for saying, oh, we don't come from Africa, we are indigenous to America. And that's just an example to say that this over historization that has happened, I just don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's healthy at all. I think it should be a specialized group. It should be a specialized group within the nation that pushes it, the culture, the history, and like a library.
I feel you, Tendaji, but see, here's what the point that you're not understanding with what you were saying. So I want to just say that the point I'm talking about with history is unique. I'm not talking about African history and what whites did to Black people. I'm talking about economic history, because a lot of us think, oh, we're just complaining, and we don't understand that a bunch of white corporations and white governments invested in Asia. They didn't invest in our countries. But the thing, the other point, that where your point makes sense in the African American context doesn't make sense in Africa. Every African leader agrees with this lady.
Well, even with the investment part,
Let me just finish this point. Every African leader agrees with the lady. They don't talk about colonialism and how all they thinking about is, hey, we need to do this, invest in us. They're begging to invest. That's all they're doing. So
yeah,
they're not talking about how the West did this and this to us. That's not the context in Africa. Anybody who actually makes moves in Africa is not talking about the stuff we talk in our fringe elements in America. So let's not compare the two.
well,
It's
of
not
course, well,
comparable at all.
we can compare it. It's called extrapolation. I'm extrapolating it. Of course, it's not a one for one analogy.
We are
It's
a
not a one.
fringe
Listen,
group on
hold
the
on. Wait till I'm
internet,
done. Wait
and
till I'm
we are
done. Wait till
not
I'm
the
done, bro.
same people running
Listen
governments
what
in
I'm saying.
Africa,
I'm
running
not
business
talking
in
about
Africa.
when
The
you
people running business and
listen what I'm
governments in
saying.
Africa are not complaining like
Analogies are
we
not
are.
always one to one. You understand that?
No, but
Analogies are not one
the
to
point
one.
you're making doesn't make sense
And what you
because
talking
we're
about
talking about
investment?
Africa
Listen what I'm
and we're
saying. Listen
talking
what I'm
about
saying.
African
Listen what I'm saying.
governments
Hold
and
up.
African
Wait.
companies. They are
When you
not
talking about
complaining. They
investment,
don't
because you keep talking
disagree with
about
the lady.
American
They agree
companies, you
with the
keep talking
lady.
about
All right,
American
hey,
companies.
one mic. I'm trying to one mic. Go ahead, Chicago.
Yeah, when you talking about investment, ain't nobody just coming, like you say, they agreeing with these people and they ain't doing the fucking work. You got to do the work in your country for people to come invest in it. So, and that's if you're looking for outside investment. Unless you understand that we are all we need, and you start building these bridges and relationships, and yeah, that's not a short-term thing. That's a long-term thing, and that's why I brought up with the comment the sister made about the piecemeal strategies, because that's going to be more of what we need. Looking for outside investments, unless a lot of the, and like she said, a lot of the remittances, and I may get this point wrong, but I think she said something about money going, they were sending to India. A lot of those remittances, I mean to China, that was put towards private industry. And unless, like I said, people are going to organize somehow or even put their money together somehow, a group of 300 Ghanaians is going to say, instead of sending, however many CDs to our family, we're going to take half of that and put towards building, I don't know, a hospital, or clinic, or whatever type of business, or apartment building, or whatever, to make those changes, to make this place now ripe for investment and prime for people to come invest. Unless you're going to make it, ready for that, then just focus on intercontinental trade and building and networking and things like that.
I have a question for people who pay attention to the economy. Why is it that in Dubai and in China and in India, you never hear about European companies avoiding taxes, but you hear about that in Africa?
Government.
So I'm just saying, like, we don't have the same relationship. Now, I'm going to just pause for a second, but I will talk later about solutions, because investing in ourselves and doing business in Africa and doing business among African countries is the key, and capitalism, I think, is the key. But don't avoid economic history. I'm not talking about the history between Europe and Africa. I'm just talking about economic history. You
Let's
cannot
pass
compare our situation with other people's situation.
Okay. Let's pass it up. Wakoya, go ahead.
Greetings, everyone. Calling
Hello.
from Ghana. Just want to say hi and thanks for allowing me on here. I really just wanted to call in and piggyback off what everybody's saying. Everybody is looking at this woman's commentary through prisms that are actually pretty accurate, but do not look at the entire picture. My sentiments sort of lie in between what was said by Obi and Mono. I mean, the economic history and our relationship with the West is very, very important. But the point I want to actually touch on here is the fact that a lot of the comments that the lady made, I forgot what her name was. Although I agree with the gist, a lot of her talking points are still the work talking points coming from the West. Listen, there's no doubt about it that to move from the agricultural perspectives to move into agro-business and then move into manufacturing is the key. That's the key for all countries. But I think African countries in general should not be looking at models that provide manufacturing to support Europe again. I mean, the big thing in Africa here is they're pushing this agricultural revolution, the second agricultural revolution with GMO technology. It increases productivity and all that. The consequences of these types of behaviors in Africa would completely decimate our economic base. Capitalism is actually African. Economic advancement is African. If you look at our traditional societies, wealth has been built on capitalist platforms, but we also had our communal perspectives. So I think one of the things I always want to hear when we talk about these things are, where is the African centeredness in this approach? They're talking about Africa becoming a breadbasket for the world. They're trying to push Africans to start growing crops that can go into Europe's for processing, same plantation mentality. So we'll take an example where an African would probably look at their territories and we will start growing things like sorghum or wheat, stuff that the Europeans will consume, because in effect, that's how we perceive advancement. We produce stuff that we'll sell to Europe to get foreign exchange to run our economies and capitalize. But you look at it, how does that strengthen Africa if we do not actually invest in things that Africans consume? Why aren't we looking at, and that's where I agree with Obi and Mono, why are we looking at our own homegrown technology to develop our own products and goods that Africans will consume, so that Europe and Western America have no real influence on how we produce, distribute, and profit of these things? We have to look at what is eaten in Africa. I always say this to Africans. I'm West African in Ghana. Everybody in West Africa eats a form of cassava, gari, fufu, whatever it. Why don't we look at cassava as a crop and take it to the next level? We're not only are we eating our indigenous foods, we're producing starch for industrialization. We're using it to bake bread. We're using it to create additional things, whatever, clothing. I mean, there's so much that technology can be used to transform this one crop that all Africans consume to additional value-added crops where we have control of how we produce, how we distribute. But oh no, we want to hear ladies like this who have perspectives that are Europe driven, and then we say, oh, the way that Africa grows is to have these economic zones and grow things. We are back in the plantation mode. That's one thing I want to say, and I want to give an example of what's going on in Ghana, where right now Ghana used to be a leader in cocoa production, but how did that benefit the Africans who were laboring to grow these cocoa farms? They were not getting, what was the code again? 5 billion as opposed to 140 billion in Switzerland. How was the African benefiting from growing cocoa? So what have they decided to do? They cut down the cocoa trees, and what are they doing? They're mining gold. There's gold in the ground. Now, I'm not saying that the galamsey, which is destroying our environment, is the way to go. But guess what? The people are taking charge. They're making money on their own lives. And the things that the government should do, instead of trying to stop it, is to try to regulate it, to try to find a mechanism in which these people can actually mine the gold that is on their own lands under their own feet, but do not destroy the environment, because that's how you transform wealth directly from the people, for and from and to the people. So some of these nice ideologies that are pushed by people with Western ideas, on the gist of it, it sounds good, but until it's African-centered, until it is the Africans themselves who are looking at these things and say, yes, we want to industrialize, but how do we do it as Africans, for Africans? I think we're just going around in circles. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
No problem. Man, go ahead, Mansour. Go ahead, man. Unmute yourself, Mansour.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for having me. I'm gonna say a few things, right? What the sister was saying is like she took the words out of my mouth, basically. And these African leaders, right? Since I started paying attention to Africa, like in detail, like reading my history and stuff like that, these leaders, they are so divided. They don't have a one mind. Everybody's making deals. You can see China or whichever private company from America or wherever, they go to Ghana, they make a deal for gold. They leave Ghana, they go to Sierra Leone, they make a deal for gold, different prices. They go to Burkina Faso, anywhere, they go to all these places. Like one company can do that. Different deals, different prices. That's a disaster. They cannot even come together and say, you know what, Ghana, Sierra Leone, or whatever, we're going to sell our gold only for this price, at this time, and then so and so and so forth. They cannot even sit down and think about stuff like that. So what one of the brother was saying about administratively, like organization, that's a disaster. It's not there, and that's a big problem because they cannot even determine a price of gold, which is spread all over the place. The West determines the price, take it to them, convert it into any kind of product they want to convert it to, and then sell it back to us at a higher price. They make themselves wealthy. So unity is not there. Everybody's busy making deals for themselves. So it's like self-centeredness, which is a disaster. And then the next thing I want to talk about is when you do shows about Africa, I always talk about electricity. I know you always see me talk about electricity. I read the book Economic Hitman, Dynast. After I read the book, what I did was at the back of the book, the first edition, I scrolled all the way to the back and I saw contact information for the guy. So I emailed his assistant. I said, because I saw something in there about electric project in one of the countries in Latin America, how the guy explained how they're holding it back. So I said, okay. So my mind went to my country, Sierra Leone, the Bumbuna hydroelectric plant, which I know you know about somehow, Diana. So I said, okay, let me try to get hold of this guy. It was so hard to get hold of him. So I emailed back and forth, they tried to block me. I said, please, I want to talk to him. I want to interview him. So I was lucky enough. He said, okay, for them to give me dates and time and everything will be available. And then I gave him my dates. I interviewed the guy. I do have the questions and the answer. I said, I saw something about in your book about electric project, how you guys are holding those back across in different countries around the world. I said, and then I explained to him about our electric project in Sierra Leone, which has been going on for years and years and years. And without even finishing the conversation, he said, Israel, he said, economic hitmen are holding your country electric project back. He said, listen, once you open your mouth, I know what you're going to say. So you don't even need to finish everything. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm going to tell you a few things. He said, one thing that we do as economic hitmen, we make sure no one in your country knows how to operate that thing. No one knows if anything happens to that thing, how to fix it, what to do, what not to do. He said, as we go along with the project, we make sure certain areas, we keep it secret and that's it. So we can be in charge until the end of time. So we can exploit that country resources and everything. And he said, I said, okay, what about the money to build such project? He said, well, what we do again is a trap. He said, we go to the leader, we tell the leader, listen, we have a project here that we already write up for you. We're going to present it to the leader. They will present the project to the leader, and they will say, well, listen, you can go this way or this way. We're going to give you this loan. He said they would deliberately present excess amount of money. And I said, well, why do you guys do that? He said, it is likely that that leader is going to fall in the trap. He or she is going to take that money because he or she wants some of that money. So he or she is going to fall for the trap and take the loan. But the reason why they give the excess amount is to make sure if they fall, like default or whatever, they can say, okay, well, okay, can I get the gold? Can I get this? Can I get that? Can I get that, and that? He said that's what they do. So he said, and I asked him, I said, if you have a way, so if I invite you in my country, will you be able to speak to anybody? He said, yeah, he doesn't mind to do that, to talk to people. He said, but the only thing is, sometimes the leaders, some of them are aware. And he said too, like, if there's a country that is really important to the US economy, whatever, if the leader is a little bit resistant, I said, what do you guys do? He said, well, what we do is we tell the leader, listen, do you remember what happened to the other leader in that country when the way he died? We did it. We killed him because he was trying to limit us from getting access to what we needed in that country. He said they will remind the leader, they will use a threat to threaten the leader that is a little bit reluctant to fall for their deals. He said so they use all of those threats. So that's why what the lady was saying is kind of like true and not true, like Alan was saying, because the West, Diners, Africa is filled with resources from north to south, from east to west. There is no way they're gonna make you have the resources and then you have the knowledge to produce. Guess what? The game is gonna lock. The world history is gonna turn upside down. And Africa, even with China growing, expanding right now, the threat is not so much about China, it is us African people. Because if we flip, if we change, the world is gonna turn upside down. The narrative is gonna turn upside down on their heads. So that's the threat to them. So it's kind of like both ways, correct and not correct. So I that's what I want to say for now.
All right, go ahead. To Nigel. Go ahead, to Nigel.
Yeah, Diners, thanks for having me. Greetings to everyone on the panel, Rokoya, and to the chat and distant viewers. This type of topic really annoys me, and that lady made me furious because I feel like I'm lied to all my life. You know, while growing up, you hear our leaders talk about all kinds of things, economic growth, we need power supply, we need all this stuff. That is so besides the point. What she said during that interview, we were like, oh, we'll ignore the other side of Singapore. Let's just focus on the economics of what they did. While the other side she's ignoring is the reason why they built their country in the first place, which is their security. Singapore is one of the most militaristic countries in the world. Right now, for one soldier, in Singapore, soldier has to defend about 13 to 20 citizens. In Nigeria, one soldier has to defend 2,000. In Burkina Faso, 3,000. If you look at Dubai, that she used as an example, in 1990, a Dubai soldier United Arab Emirates soldier has to defend about 30 citizens. In America, with the highest technology in the world, with the best technology in the world, they still have to defend about 150 citizens. One soldier to 150 citizens. While on average in African countries, is 1 to 1,000 and above. We don't have our security right, and you expect your economy to grow. Most of the world have done well so far. You have to fix your security. This is the reason why that young man that was and the gentleman that was talking earlier on said when they go to African countries, they threaten our leaders. The reason why you can threaten them is because they're not secure. How can you? It's common sense. And these people, they like this. Is what annoys me about them. They are highly educated, they know the truth, and they lie to our people. Tell us that it's economy. You have to chase your economy, you have to chase agriculture. Yeah, no, you have to make sure you take care of your security first. Then you can be able to negotiate eye face to face with these people. If they try to threaten you, they can't, because they cannot take you out. They encourage us to focus on agriculture, our education, and all this stuff we are focusing on is to enrich them still. Because when our people get educated, they end up coming to the West to work for them. Every money we make in our country, 80% of it ends up in the West, either through smuggling or through corruption, name it. Ends up this. If you don't get your house secure, forget it. Everything else you do is going to fail. And it annoys me when they keep having this conversation, because we've had it for 60 years. They've been lying to us over and over and over again. It drives me mad. Anytime I talk to all those elites, that's one of the things I ask them. I said, why have you been lying to us? Why don't you tell us this truth of what you know about those countries? That clearly, categorically said, I'm going to ignore that part. How can you ignore such an important fact? Highly educated woman.
Can I get in next, Don?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to shift it towards like solutions, but also so I think the true point that she brings up is just the basic sentence or fact or phrase, which is that Africa is not poor because of colonialism. That is true, but it has to be contextually known. So all countries before the modern world and before capitalism were poor. All people were poor because we were all subsistence farmers. The vast majority of us. In some countries, it was different ranging. Some people did make implements and different tools and stuff, but some people were soldiers and things like that, and then kings taxed. But what happens is when capitalism arises, first the agricultural revolution happens, which is basically you need less people to make food over time, and that time that you give the majority of people lends people to be able to do other things, as well as food becoming cheaper means you're spending less of your labor and less of your money and energy on food. And then what happens is you take that proceeds and put it into different industries. And then those industries continue to drop in prices, and those goods and services drop in prices. That gives you more income, more savings, and then people
But
start
let me tell you what she's doing. She's telling, so it's like a sick man that has got cancer. You are telling the person that you've got pains. Yes, they've got pains. You can give them painkiller, but that is not the solution.
Yes,
they are
yes,
lying. This is what they are lying. That's my point. Lying to us.
I get you.
They know full well the truth, and they just pretend as if they don't know the truth.
Yes,
we got cancer.
but
They are telling us that we got pain. We need painkillers.
yes, but I hear what you're saying. But let me just get this point, because you bring this point up a lot, and I actually highly agree with you. But here's the thing: you cannot have a military in the sense that some of these other nations have without economics first. You cannot have it beforehand. Like we actually
without electricity. You gotta have electricity first.
Enough. We have more than Sri Lanka. We have more than in North Korea. We have more
let
than
him finish. Let him finish, please.
Yeah. Okay. See, the thing is this: these militaries that we see, they really result after there's so much manufacturing of like certain implements. You know, people creating different, like, you know, people are making aircrafts now, like aircraft carriers, aircrafts. You know, they're building tanks and stuff like that. You know, our economies are not even equipped to build even TVs. You know, so building that type of thing on that scale and having a serious military, like we're not there yet. But I think the important thing is to understand, yes, we're not poor because of colonialism, only because what colonialism does is it takes resources out of our countries, but it's not that we built up certain industries or wealth and then they took that from us. That didn't happen. And so what we see in the West is they're rich, and some parts of Asia is rich because they have an abundance of goods, services, and assets. A society is rich or wealthy when they have an abundance of goods, services, and assets. What do we have to do in Africa? What we need to do is we have to stop relying on the governments in Africa to build wealth. Individual citizens and private companies should be doing that. That's number one. Number two, what we need to do is we need to stop trying to shift our economies towards servicing one sector in the West. We're never going to dominate any Western industry as an African government. I'm not saying like an African American or African Americans can't do that in America, but Nigeria is not going.
Somebody whistling.
My bad.
Yeah, so Nigeria is not going to dominate like the tech sector in like America or something like that. But what we need to do is, if we build goods and services with the aim of servicing the African economy itself and African population in any given society, we can bring the prices down. That's going to give every individual citizen more wealth to invest in banks. Then we can use these banks to invest in other businesses and industries in our countries. So the key is to service your country now, provide everything that we know in the world exists in the country now, build it in the country now, build toilet paper in the country, build machines in the country, build planes in the country. For instance,
let's pass it to Alex. Well, we got a lot of
let me just give you this last point.
Okay, you got 20 seconds. Go.
All right, so in Africa, there's tons of cell phones. So we're not poor of cell phones, but airline tickets are expensive. So it's hard to get to other countries. It would be cheaper if we had more airlines, more airplanes in Africa, so that the prices of each ticket would go down. And that simple analogy is how every industry needs to work in Africa. So if we focus on that, we can make the economies better.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I've been listening to the show for about like probably like 30 minutes to like an hour. I heard some of the stuff that Obi had to say, and I heard some of the stuff everybody else on the panel had to say. I agree with a lot of what Obi has to say. Niger is talking about us building armies and these super militaries that are supposed to protect us, but we don't have the manufacturing base to do that, and we can't really compete with the bigger militaries in the West that has cheap manufacturing and also has the knowledge to build these warships and planes and whatnot. So the biggest thing Africa has to focus on is industrializing, you know. And Obi had a point where he said the West did not want to invest in Africa. Mainly, they just wanted to exploit Africa for the most part. And the reason why they did invest in China and other Asian countries is because it directly like benefited them, as far as like cheap labor goes. There's no reason why. There's little reason why they would send all their manufacturing jobs that was helping their citizens in America and send them packing and send them all the way to China. That's because they're basically paying the Chinese people pennies. It was almost like another form. Don't get me wrong, but it was almost like another form of slavery. Where you need the cheapest amount of labor you can get so you can maximize on whatever you're making. So they found the Chinese people who had billions of people who were in poverty, and they pretty much paid them pennies to develop and create and also distribute whatever America was making internationally. So it's not like they went there intentionally believing that China is someday gonna get bigger than them and not only be their workers but also develop their own factories that they can develop and build a product with, and then send that product overseas to Africa, Europe, and now they're even sending more. Now they're even sending more to America than America is producing in China. Because they have their own local factories that they made with their own people. So now, how exactly does Africa industrialize? Like we're at a turning point where you know nowadays there's more competition. There's just not Europe and America anymore. China has gotten big. Russia has gotten big. India has gotten big. So these people, these countries, these nations are looking for cheap labor the same way America was looking for cheap labor when they went to China. So African countries can take advantage of that by inviting corporations or big companies that can build and set up infrastructure and large industries that can develop products in Africa. And then what the Africans can do is copy the same way China did. China copies every technology that comes to their shores. They can copy the infrastructure and the technology that these outside people bring, and then make their own in their own countries, develop their own technology in their own countries from following the blueprint that these people bring, um the knowledge that these people bring. And that's how Africa can basically turn itself from a consumer to a producer. And that's all
See,
I have to say.
see, I think I hear
Can
what
I
you are
make some
saying,
points
but
before
why
I
do
go,
we
Dynasty?
always miss that China was a
Hold on.
nuclear power before
Let
Americans went there?
let
Why do we
Tadaji make
miss
his point,
this?
and then we'll pass to you.
I
Go ahead,
don't
Tadaji.
understand. Why is it that we,
Because
Let
they
me
were
just
Go
say
very
ahead.
this.
poor.
Go ahead, Tadaji. Go ahead, Tadaji.
I'm gonna just say
yeah,
this, then I'm gonna need.
these people,
Hey, Tadaji, go ahead. Hold on, to Nigel. Go ahead,
Hold up.
Tadaji.
Well, I'm gonna start off by agreeing with Tunaja. I see the brother every time he come on the panel. His solution for everything is the security, and that's important, and I agree with him on that. I see that that's a serious issue to him. But when the brother made the point about developing economically first, I think that was a good point as well. I ain't got all the answers, but I think that's a good debate whether or not Tunaja feels like these countries have enough to do what they need to do. I think it might be somewhere in the middle, like they need to develop these things simultaneously as much as possible, whether it's even like they're doing now, basically buying a tank here and there, or machine gun here and there, whenever, as the country rises. But I'm gonna say this: it seems like everybody who had a problem with what the sister said on the video came with the same disagreement, basically, which was like, it was basically like, oh, she's dismissive of uh just some circumstances, right? And her tone, she's a puppet of a white man. Nobody said that, but that's like a general idea. So I'm gonna do right now what I think you have to do for Black people globally. We gotta understand we got a lot of similarities. And one thing you gotta do for Black people is show them that you understand nuance. Because you don't come out and say it every time, they wanna act, they use that like victim, like the sister said, Africa isn't in the position it's in. Well, she said Africa is in the position it's in maybe a tiny percent because of colonization. And those two things, I winced immediately. I disagreed. And then I'm like, I don't really, you know what I'm saying? She off with that. But with our people, if you do something like that, nothing you said matters, because now victim-minded people are gonna use statements like that to write everything you said off. So I didn't agree when she said that, and I knew people, you got to show people you understand nuance in the economic history, like sister, she left, Rokoya. I'm gonna say this. Brother Obi spoke about the economic hitman. I mean, that wasn't Obi. I think that was Brother Mansa.
Mansa.
Yeah, my brother Mansa spoke about the economic hitman. The history of that, I think a lot of people know. A lot of the questions you said you asked them, the answers to those questions is in the book and on the videos online. As far as solutions for those type of problems, I don't, I don't think that's something we need to get caught up on. I understand the history of it, but I think, I mean, unless we're gonna go bring the leaders these books, but like he said, they know. So I don't think it's a whole lot we could do about that. Like they go and, don't get me wrong, I saw where, the Chinese built this thing in, what was it, in East Africa, they built this big center or whatever, and they bugged all the computers and stuff like that. We saw that on Dr. Mumby's channel. So I understand, stuff like that still happens across the continent, but I think we should. I don't think that's a huge issue. But Sister Rakaya spoke about African centeredness and using our resources to, develop our own technologies and solutions. She spoke about cassava, and I agree. And I'm gonna say something that I know is gonna be unpopular. I think that many of us, and a brother from Nigeria, I get this idea from a brother from Nigeria, and I thought about it for a long time. Many of us are gonna have to accept the fact that it's gonna be the African diaspora, mainly people, continental Africans from the continent, as well as diasporans who are not born on the continent. A lot of the solutions are gonna have to come from outside, and that's just a fact. I think a lot of people don't want to have to accept, is that it's gonna have to be people from the outside, because the dollar and these other outside currencies, of course, that's a big part of it. But for I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm gonna just leave it right there. And I'm gonna say the last point I'm gonna make is about agreeing with Brother Obi. He spoke about time, you know what I mean, and basically time being a resource, and and food, having cheaper food, and what that allows for the progression of the economy is, I think, where you was going, and that's the solution to damn near all of these problems, whether it's the military or any other problems we spoke about, is a middle class. You got to have a middle class in any country. That's the engine for any economy in any country.
Yes, sir.
To
Let
move
me
forward.
pass it to
And that's
appreciate
it.
it,
I'm
brother.
done.
Can I say something real quick?
Well, hold on. We'll pass it to Niger, the African always. Go ahead, Niger.
Yeah, I don't understand why people keep shying away from this. Is it that our men are afraid of what it will require from them? Sri Lanka.
Niger,
Can I just finish my point? Can I just finish my point? Can you be bored all you want? Sri Lanka, with a lesser defense budget, raised twice as many soldiers as Nigeria. So how are they doing it? Have they got foreheads? See, if we keep saying we don't have the money, we have enough. If Sri Lanka, that is poorer than us, using less, can do it. When China did it, they didn't have a large middle class. when they became a nuclear power. It's almost as if we are trying to bury our head in the sand, expecting that the problem is going to solve itself. Because we know full well this is on the men, and they are hiding. They are all hiding under the table, behind the door. They give an excuse not to do the necessary thing that they need to do. We just had somebody on this panel say that they will come to a meeting and threaten our leaders. How do you think they threaten the leaders? Is it with flowers? This is the essence of life. If you go in any school playground, it tells you the simple rules of life. The bully will keep bullying you until you are able to inflict something on that bully before the bully will stop bullying you. What I'm asking for is not exceptional. I'm just asking for basic sanity here. What we have in our continent is not a country. It's a protectorate. These people are not protecting themselves. They just sit there. A country of 20 million people have 6,000 soldiers, and you call that a country? That is not a country. What is our men doing? We just keep pretending as if this is not the fact. If you are doubting it, look at other countries. Anybody to me, look at other countries. This is why I don't want to talk about anything else until we fix this. Other countries that have done it, they fix their security first. You can't build a house with a beautiful infrastructure and everything, and you leave the doors open and the windows open. You are bound to be poor forever, because they will come and steal everything, and the people that this type of stuff are bound to be a slave race forever, because you will never grow up to ever man up to defend yourself like every other community does. Come on, how can we pretend as if this is not the fact of life?
I think two Niger is putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I just told you China didn't do that.
Two Niger.
Hold on. I'm going to say something too. Alex is going to write somehow.
The days of fighting off European colonization using weapons, those days are pretty much over. We're fighting ourselves right now.
China never fired a shot. Think what I'm saying. Think about what I'm saying. China never fired one shot.
Niger, let the guy finish.
Niger, we're fighting ourselves right now in the continent. If Nigeria amasses the soldiers that you're talking about, who are they going to be fighting? Who are they going to be fighting head on?
Stopping people from invading them.
Who's invading Nigeria? It's Boko Haram and ISIS that's invading Nigeria.
Because they don't have to do that now.
Huh? Plus IPOB.
When your door is already open, why do they need to break your door open?
Those are the people who are a threat right now, a military threat to Nigeria. It's African people themselves. It's not European people who are coming inside with their weapons. And
I say something.
I tell you this because if I was a white man, I would screw you people over like crazy. If I was a white man, you guys don't even, you can't even wake up. If I was a white man, you have to
right now,
screw you over.
Fighting Nigerians. What are you talking about?
Okay. I'm telling you with the kind of mind that I have. If I was a white man, what I would do to you people, you have that kind of weak environment. I would take full advantage of you. Do you know what Nigeria is going through? Nigeria has crude oil from about half of it is stolen, and the money ends up in foreign banks. Then, when we use that crude oil money that we actually get, the little we get, we used to buy petrol, we bring it back to Nigeria. We use the money to buy petrol that we should be refining. We bring it back to Nigeria. Half of it again is stolen and ends up in West. It's only us that can make this kind of stuff in such a crazy way. You wonder why we are poor.
Which
I think
European
that
country can Nigeria take head on if they bring all their soldiers? Which European country can Nigeria take head on? Because you would have to attack one of them head on.
No, you don't have to. China didn't attack anybody. India didn't attack anybody. Cuba didn't attack anybody. Come on. You just have to take care of your backyard. That's all.
Let's
your backyard is full of terrorists.
Hold on. Let's pass it to Mansur, then we'll pass it to African always. Go ahead, Mansur.
Yeah, so Dynast, again, I'm gonna repeat myself again, Dynast. Anytime you do a show on Africa, I always say electricity, Dynast. If that did not happen, right, Africa will never go to the level it needs to go to. For example, Tunisia always talks about military, and I agree with Tunisia though, about military, about protection, right? It's good. But Tunisia, without electricity, to me, that's the number one thing before anything else, because when you have electricity, like for example, Dennis mentioned why there's no running water in many places, right? You have electricity, right? You can use machine to pump water to be spread all over the place, even if because Sierra Leone is kind of hill valley, which I know already. Some hills, water cannot go up there, okay? Because of why? The water, the power is very low. But if you have electricity that can pump water 24/7, it goes up. Every home will get water, running water, okay? So then in Tunisia, remember this, right? When the prison was broken in Nigeria, when those guys broke the prison and entered and free some people, you were talking about the video camera not there, right? Everything. How that camera is gonna be there when there's no electricity to work that camera 24/7, so they can see people when they come in ahead of time and take action. So to me, I know you're very passionate about the military, and when Alex is going back and forth, it's true, because we need to have the electricity which China had before, and then they started to manufacture, and then guess what? They build up their military strength, right? The same. So, like for example, South Korea, right, had produced electricity than all of Africa. A little South Korea, right? But guess what? When they manufacture, while they're manufacturing, they're also building their military. North Korea is producing. We see North Korea every 1 year, every 2 years. You see when they produce weapon, test weapon, everything. Why? They have the manufacturing base, which the number one thing first is electricity that can give them that time to use light 24/7 and make machines and make their weapons, their bombs, and everything. We need to have electricity first in Africa. Without that, nothing is gonna happen. Nothing. We're not gonna grow. We're not gonna
North
be
Korea
to the
was
level
a
we need to be to.
backwater before they became a nuclear power. They were a backwater before they became a nuclear power. How do you think that happened? Most of the country didn't have electricity. We had electricity to build a backbone for our country. As a matter of fact, we have more technology right now than the West had in the 1920s and the 1930s when they built their civilization. When they even built their nuclear weapons, we have more technology right now at our disposal than they had. What is our excuse? We keep excusing this.
The industrial revolution
Let's
promoted by
pass
electricity in
the African
Nigeria.
always. Hey, African always. Go ahead, African always.
Okay. Tunisia, you're very passionate, and I understand that. Let me put a little bit of reality, because right now I'm actually in the business of rolling out a business in Africa, a very substantial business. And one of the things I noticed is I was saying to my partner that I now understand why corruption is so rampant in the continent, because as I sit across the table and talk to people, if I were not in the United States, where there are laws to prevent you from bribing people, you could get a lot done. You grease the right palm, and you get what you want. Now, I am sitting here thinking to myself, wow, I am nowhere near these giant companies that come in. So the giant companies would have serious money to be able to dangle in front of the various parties. And I'm talking about from top to bottom, soup to nuts, everybody in between. So corruption is a monster problem in Africa. Part of the problem is, as an outsider looking in, is if you look at historically, just remember, Africa was set up as a resource for the Industrial Revolution in Europe. Everybody knows that. We don't have to go through that. So when they got independence, the economies were still structured the same way. Now, if you take something like Nigeria, where they got their independence in 1960, discovered oil in 1958, shipped the first barrel in 1960, they have lost over $2 trillion of value, either from theft, lack of investment, corruption, or whatever else you will call it. $2 trillion is a lot of money. Invested over time compounds. Everybody knows compound interest builds over time. So obviously, many of you probably heard about the recent pipeline that they discovered. Well, that pipeline has been there for over 40 years. It's not new. What am I getting at here? It's very easy to corrupt Africa. It's not so easy to corrupt in Asia. If you remember, Indonesia was, a lot of these countries had military regimes, just like Africa did. But somehow, the military regimes there, I don't want to call it conscience, but all these military regimes steal money. But Africa is the only place where I see somebody would steal the whole damn thing. In other words, in Asia, they'll steal, let's say there's $1 billion to steal, right? $1 billion available. They'll steal 70 million, 100 million. But in Africa, they'll take the whole damn thing. And, they'll kill the goose. And you see that over and over. Rwanda is not a exception in the sense that Rwanda is not doing anything that anybody with any sense of decency couldn't do. Rwanda is a very poor country, but why Rwanda works is because there's only one sheriff in town, and that's Kagame. And the little bit that he gets, in fact, when he confronted the West to say, listen, don't tell me how to spend the money you gave me, hold me accountable. He could say that because he wasn't the giant crook that most people have come to expect. So even with a tiny, tiny, tiny budget, most of it, some 70% of Rwanda's budget, comes from aid. Because Rwanda is not a resource-rich country. But because it's managed so well, and if you go to Rwanda and break on speed and try to bribe the cop, you're going to spend the night in jail, guaranteed. Take it to the bank. So it's Rwanda is getting, for every dollar Rwanda spends, it's getting about 95 cents worth of value back to the people. That's why it looked at, and if you look at the corruption index or whatever they call it, the honesty index, some version of whatever they call it, Rwanda is in the top portion of that. Botswana is the next country in Africa like that. Now, the big difference is the leader of Botswana, the original from independence, wasn't trying to fill its pocket like most other African leaders. When the leadership is honest, when the leadership is not trying to steal, everybody else below has to shape up. Everybody else below has to shape up because the leader will come down on you, with a massive stick, and you get you find yourself in jail. So in the case of Botswana, even as somebody complained about the fact that they're getting 70%, to be honest with you, Africa, in many cases, even if they were getting 10% and managed it efficiently, they would be in a much better position. As for myself, when I talk to these people, if I were willing to bribe people, I could get things done much faster. But every time I think about that, I think about the young man in Nigeria who lives under the Lekki Bridge, who has nobody to fight for him. I think about the young girl in northern Nigeria who didn't go to school because somebody took the money that belonged to her. I think about the kids who are out of college. Let me give you some statistics on Nigeria real quick, and then I'm going to just shut up. Nigeria, in terms of power or electrification, only 62%. That's extremely low. Literacy rate, 66%. Extremely low. Southern Nigeria has a much higher literacy rate than in northern Nigeria. I think most people probably know that. Those stats, plus the $2 trillion that was wasted. Remember, when you export crude, it's inexpensive. It's $100 a barrel or maybe less, depending on the time. But when you import oil, kerosene, jet fuel, and all the derivatives of petroleum, you're talking about 6 times the value.
African I need to pack because I have to close out soon. So if you got,
okay,
you can wrap it up in like 30 seconds.
Sure. The bottom line is a significant part of Africa's problem is corruption, lack of imagination, and lack of exposure. Many of these leaders don't know. When I talk to many people, I can't tell you that some things that we take for granted in the West, it's not so obvious to them. So There's a lot of work to be done, but Africa one day will rise, but it's going to take a hell of a lot of work to make it happen.
All right, Gassimo, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dynast. Shout out to everybody on the panel. I just want to quickly make my points, but I want to just put some things in perspective for my brother African always. Shout out to you, brother. I just want to say this. You mentioned the alleged illegal pipeline. That oil that Nigeria claims to have belongs to my people in the Delta. And please, if anyone gets a chance, please, the Niger Delta, parts of the East are flooded right now. If you can donate or find any organization, please send some blankets, send something. That place is flooded.
Gas them up. What's his name? Sorrow. What's his name?
Sowore.
Sowore. Is that no? Not Sowore. Not Sowore. The
Who? Peter Obi?
No, not
Sarawiwa.
Yeah.
No. He's Ogoni.
Okay.
Kesariwa is Ogoni.
Okay, go ahead.
But that oil belongs to my people. And to quote, Alhaji Dokubu Asari, Nigeria doesn't belong to us in the Delta. We don't get the benefit of that oil. So, a lot of times, no disrespect to you, brother, on the outside, I'm going to build that illegal pipeline because those guys in the north and some of my elites, I know Tunaja doesn't like it when I say this, but Tunaja, give me my piece. They're taking advantage. So to ask that person who's in the Delta to not build an illegal pipeline or bunker while Nigeria is not working for them, this is the problem of African state formation. It was never created with the thought process that, hey, listen, these people in this region, are they going to properly be served? And a lot of times, because in the West, we're used to our state, crapping on us. We're used to states implementing violence on us. We're used to states allowing us to be, treated all manners and types of way that, again, for like I said, for someone who's in the Delta where that oil belongs to, and then you compare the whole northern Nigeria is filled with lithium. That's the whole Boko Haram and herdsmen. Northern Nigeria is filled, and the guy who just exposed this was Al-Mustafa, who I hope is the next president of Nigeria. Right? He's the one who just exposed. The whole north is filled with lithium. They found gold in Zamfara State, African always. You know what those northerners said? They said, oh, the gold is for us. So for years, that oil, we've been getting only 10% or 13%. And it's been financing all of Nigeria, but now that they find gold in the north, they say, oh, the gold is only for them, and that they'll give Nigeria the percentage. So who's playing these games? So the problem is that these African states are not functioning for all the Africans. But let me get to my main points very quick. I know Dan said you got to go. I think Niger has a great point, right, in terms of security. And the perfect example of his point was Abacha. I don't believe any of the propaganda about Abacha. That's why I support Al-Mustafa. Because I've been doing the research. All that stuff that they said, Abacha never took an IMF loan when he was in charge of Nigeria. Never took it, refused. Babangida took the IMF loan. Abiola was ready to take the IMF loans. He was working with them, ITT and all these guys. And Abacha came into power and said, nope, I think he only traveled outside the country once. So, of course, the Western propaganda starts making up these stories that he stole all these monies. But if you start doing the research and start saying, well, how come Nigeria was never able to recover these monies? Because it never existed in the first place. So they had to just give them something. But they know they're never going to give $5 billion to Nigeria because Abacha never really stole $5 billion. But that's neither here nor there. So I think Niger's point about a strong African military or strong African state makes 100% sense. However, here's the problem I have with a lot of the narratives. And I've said this many times. Whether it's China, whether it's Korea, there is no country that we can look up to today that was not selected by the West. The only one was Japan. And we see what the West did to Japan. Because if you think about it, Germany was giving Europe and America all the hassle in the world. They had the Blitzkrieg. They were destroying more American assets in Europe than anything the Japanese ever did. But who did they drop the atomic bomb on? They dropped it on the Japanese. And they made the Japanese, kneel down to them, put a base there. right, and all these other things. So the arguments about Africa can be like China, and we're going to bring in Western investors. Look, if you want to know how these people play the game, Brother Philip Lindsay was saying this yesterday. We don't own anything. We don't control anything. So it's very difficult. Kwame Nkrumah wrote the book about neocolonialism. He was the president of Ghana. He realized it. He was trying to use cocoa to, create foreign revenue for himself. What did the Europeans do? They just flooded the cocoa market because they have enough staying power. They flooded the cocoa market. He couldn't laugh.
Hey, Gasma, we got to close out. Hey, everyone.
Okay, all right. No problem.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynasty Search for Uhuru. Peace.